True summertime horror stories. Summer is the greatest season by a long shot. That's a hill I'll die on any day. My love for the summer doesn't revolve around partying or drinking, as you may expect, but nature. Warmer weather and the outdoors are inseparable, in my opinion, and I guarantee you that when the heat rolls through, I spend more hours outside than inside. It was a warm night in mid-June a few summers ago when this happened. I was 17 or 18 at the time. For context, there may be a big nature keep close to my residence. When I say big, I imply it. It's near 1,000 acres in length. To nowadays, there are nonetheless components of it that I'm tremendous I haven't explored. Two of my friends and I agreed to spend a nighttime tenting in the one's woods. Technically, camping there was strictly forbidden and borderline illegal, but we figured that there has been no threat a person could seize us on this dense woodland. We'd just have to trek as deeply as viable. Chuck become the tenting fanatic of the group. I'm telling you, this youngster cherished cosplaying as a Boy Scout and in all likelihood knew near 100 specific knots. Our different friend, Jackson, constantly supplied the beverages. If we have been sober, he become unhappy. That's just how matters went when Jackson changed into concerned. I keep in mind the sensation of the mild summer breeze blowing through my hair as the three folks packed up Jackson's automobile. The climate changed into best, no longer too cold, no longer too hot. A few beers later, the three folks determined ourselves lugging tenting gadget through the woods at like 11:30. I can't lie. I turned into feeling the alcohol start to hit me as we marched along. Chuck constantly carried this business-grade flashlight with him, so the darkness of the forest wasn't a lot of an difficulty, as lots as I loved the outside, although traversing through thick woods at this hour changed into a chunk creepy, in spite of Chuck's flashlight available. After near half an hour of heterosexual taking walks, the three of us determined ourselves in a small flat clearing that changed into an ideal spot to installation camp. We pitched our tent as in step with Chuck's guidance and set our chairs up. The fireplace became the next step. Chuck once more took the lead in this, and after some extra minutes, we had a pretty respectable fireplace going. Jackson reached into his bag and tossed me any other drink. He then grabbed his JBL speaker and started gambling some track. The vibe was perfect, and we need to have been speak me and drinking for an amazing hours. We have been all pretty under the influence of alcohol at that factor, and I could tell the other men had been pretty much geared up to percent it up for the night time. Jackson grew to become the tune down and commenced collecting discarded beer cans. Just then, a deafening whistle pierced the silence. I nearly jumped out of my seat, going from drunken haze to high alert in a bee counted of seconds. I do not know the way to describe it. The whistle became abnormally loud, however still sounded distant. Jackson Speedy closed the speaker off, and the three of us sat in silence as we exchanged worried looks. I may want to experience my heartbeat pounding via my chest. We sat there, frozen in place, for what appeared like all the time, listening carefully to our surroundings. But there has been not anything. It almost appeared quieter now than it had whilst we first got there, like eerily quiet. Not even the ordinary wooden sounds you return to count on. I used that time to play my reminiscence of the whistle returned in my head. It truly wasn't an animal's noise. The first-rate manner I can describe it is a standard whistle you would pay attention at a ballpark. Chuck subsequently broke the silence, quietly urging us to percent up and depart. Jackson and I disagreed with that plan, although We may hazard encountering whoever made the noise, which I was beyond fearful of. It become past 3 a.m. at this factor, and stumble upon this past due would best mean hassle. Chuck hypothesized that whoever made that noise changed into possibly aware of our presence, which turned into a chilling thought. I didn't know what to do. On one hand, staying positioned violated every survival instinct I had. Packing up and leaving at this hour did not seem like a much better choice, either, even though. We sooner or later agreed to wait it out. I went to put the fire out. However, Chuck recommended me in opposition to it, pronouncing that a fire might repel any dangerous animals. Only then did the authentic gravity of the state of affairs smack me inside the face. We have been actually miles far from any civilization. It changed into 3 a.m., and there was an unknown entity somewhere in the darkness. Another 10 minutes or so handed, and we had resumed talking, however at a much decreased extent, with no track. I do not suppose any folks felt secure going to sleep, simply. But, although, and then out of the corner of my eye I saw it. Something small flew over the darkness of Jackson's shoulder and landed immediately inside the hearth. It changed into a firecracker. I screamed bloody homicide because it commenced glowing in the hearth, and Chuck cursed as he sprung up out of his chair and bolted into the darkness. Jackson and I scrambled to follow, leaving all of our stuff in the back of. We stuck up with Chuck, whose flashlight turned into beaming wildly through the woods as he frantically sprinted. We ran until we couldn't anymore, and Jackson keeled over and threw up. Chuck closed the light off, and the three of us stood there, panting, looking to discern out if we had been being followed. To my wonder, it did not look like absolutely everyone observed us. I do not suppose I've ever been so afraid, although why in the global might someone have completed that? We had to parent out what to do. Jackson desired to just find our manor out of the woods, and by no means come lower back, but Chuck turned into reluctant to depart all of his tenting gear in the back of. Plus, he reminded us the hearth turned into nevertheless active. I turned into dumbfounded. How may want to he be concerned with wooded area fires after what had just passed off? Eventually, I agreed with Chuck that we should at least test at the site. After all, no one had without a doubt chased us. So there has been a slight possibility that whoever threw that firecracker was simply gambling a merciless prank. Chuck became a navigational professional and changed into honestly capable of retrace our footsteps. I ought to make out the glow of the fire as we quietly approached, before I may want to get any nearer, although Jackson put a hand in front of me and pointed with a horrified appearance on his face. I strained my eyes to make out the sight within the distance. What I noticed might be the maximum terrifying aspect I'd ever laid eyes on. There were 3 people sitting motionlessly in our chairs like statues. The one whose face I ought to see looked useless, and his mouth was hung open. I turned into afraid to transport. What have been they even doing, I idea, understanding that they weren't even talking. This became no longer regular. The 3 of us watched for a touch while longer earlier than finding out to backpedal. We became to depart, but Jackson's foot clipped a rock, inflicting him to curse in frustration. Within seconds, the glow from the hearth went darkish, as though it had been protected with a cloak. It turned into freakishly fast. We failed to stick around every other second. We again sprinted away from the site, but this time we should pay attention, footsteps crashing at the back of us. We failed to prevent this time. We bolted out of the woods and ran all of the way to Jackson's car. By a few miracle, we weren't observed out of the woods. None of us spoke on the pressure again, each folks misplaced in our mind. The subsequent day Chuck insisted we go back to the web page within the daylight hours to accumulate his belongings. Jackson desired nothing to do with that, but I agreed to accompany Chuck. After a few searching, we eventually determined the website, which seemed commonly untouched. That is, until we were given a touch closer and observed the putrid odor coming from Chuck's tent. He unzipped it, and we observed a lifeless, rotting rat. It became sickening. I took the trace and haven't been lower back to that hold due to the fact that this ongoing trouble started about a month ago, but let me offer a few context first. I'm 24 years old, and I live with my mother and father. My family is not nicely off, and by no means has been, and quite lots all the cash I make is going into supporting the household. My courting with my parents is not the quality. We bicker quite regularly, and each time I'm now not working or putting with pals, I tend to stick to myself. I do not want to write a tough success tale or anything like that. However, I've had it tough developing up. Fitness has continually been my cross to break out. I see it as a wholesome manner to get my thoughts off non-public burdens, at the same time as also offering a great excuse to go away the house. There's a park about a 10-minute pressure from my house that has an exercising facility with bars for pull-ups, dips, and other calisthenic physical activities. During the summertime months, I like to move there to exercise session, as nature helps calm my thoughts. I like to head at nighttime time, because seeing that it is a public park, it has the tendency to get busy throughout the day. So one night, while my dad and mom have been arguing, I decided to slip out of the house to move exercise session. It'd become an exceptionally hot summer season nighttime, likely 85 stages. I keep in mind respiration inside the humid air as I walked from my doorstep to the beat-up white Corolla sitting in our driveway. I started the rickety engine and rolled down the windows as the nice and cozy summer breeze flowed via my hair. I arrived on the park and exited my car. I become the most effective automobile in the lot. It changed into probably 10 or 11 p.m. The park turned into absolutely empty at this time. The lovely surroundings mixed with the steamy air to create a relaxing atmosphere. That is some other purpose why I like this park a lot. It sits on pinnacle of a hill that overlooks the downtown region of my town, which always provides first-class and mawkish emotions to my evenings. Anyway, I started affixed on the pull-up bar. I wasn't without a doubt counting the repetitions. When I training session, I simply do it until failure. Then take a rec and do it a pair extra instances. It turned into someplace between my units after I took a break to lighten up my fingers. Before I were given back on the bar, although an indescribable feeling came over me, and unconscious urge pressured me to turn my head around. Standing actually a foot far away from my face, turned into a tall, crushed, searching man. I really screamed and jumped, like 5 toes returned. He set free a raunchy, boisterous giggle and apologized, pronouncing he failed to suggest to scare me. His look and mannerisms had been extraordinarily eccentric, proper off the bat, like he was damn close to face with me. He in reality had something incorrect with him. I requested him why he becomes so near me, and he said he lives right here. He defined that he sees me running out here all of the time, and asked me if I ought to train him. Now, I'm a totally non-confrontational type of individual, and particularly all through a time like that, I clearly just wanted to be left by myself. I awkwardly, however, in a well-mannered way, told him I'm just going to perform a little pull-use and depart. I hopped back at the bar and persevered my set. His words marinated in my thoughts. He sees me here all of the time. I felt the gaze of his eyes burning the back of my neck. However, like I stated, I'm very non-confrontational. While he did make me increasingly more uneasy, I did not truly understand what to say or do, approximately it. But then, something clearly bizarre happened. Right as I turned into about to complete my set, I heard him mutter my full call. My blood instantly grew to become cold as I jumped off the bar and slowly subsidized away. I stated a shaky, "What?" He did not reply, and as an alternative simply stared at me with his crazed, extensive-eyed smile. Idea I might have been listening to matters. That's how weird it become. I began to get a lousy feeling in my gut, like something horrific became about to manifest. Without any other phrase, I decided to quickly stroll back to my vehicle and go away. I felt that man gazing me whilst I retreated, and thankfully he didn't comply with me. Before I left the park, although I took one final look, and I saw him hanging from the bar, attempting to do a pull-up. I watched as he grabbed the bar, attempted to drag himself up, and then failed, and attempted once more, inside the precise position I become formerly in. I hastily left the park, without searching lower back. The complete trip returned. I puzzled myself. Did he sincerely say my call? Was I hallucinating? I attempted to neglect about it, and in the end I did. I woke up early the following day to get to work. I work production, and I must awaken very early, before my dad and Mom. So I turned into the primary one, to word the unmarked envelope, sitting at the front door. It changed into addressed to me. I picked it up and figured I'd study anything turned into interior on every occasion I had the danger. It became every other sweltering, warm summer season day, and I took my lunch ruin early to quiet down. I sat in my vehicle at the same time as eating my pre-made sandwich and decided to open the envelope. I failed to definitely realize what to expect, but by no means in 1,000,000 years did I think I'd discover 10 revealed pics of me. They were all unknowingly taken. One became of me in my car, one became of me at paintings, one changed into of me exercising on the park. I immediately remembered that creepy guy from the nighttime before and started to experience uncontrollably nauseous. I stared in disbelief as I flipped through the relaxation of them. One turned into of my residence, and the worst of all was an image of me slumbering, taken from outdoor my window. I almost choked on my meals as tears rolled down my cheeks. I felt dangerous. I instructed my boss a serious trouble popped up, and I left work proper away. He wasn't satisfied with me, however I failed to care. I took a photograph of the images and drove directly to the police station. I gave the police the pics and explained my come-upon at the park. I described the person to them, and that they stated they would inspect it. I told my parents about it too, and for the first time in a long term, I virtually got some sympathy out of them. More matters began going on, though. A couple nights later, at like 3 a.m., I wakened to knocks on the door. I didn't open it, assuming the worst. One day I determined a sticky word pasted to my automobile window with a heart drawn in Sharpie. I went again to the police to record this, and that they stated they might open up a stalker investigation. I have not heard returned from them, but I figured it is difficult to build a case while not having concrete proof. This took place about a month in the past, and I've been on excessive alert ever since. My mother and father are searching out a new domestic that's already hard given our financial state of affairs. I'll update if something in addition takes place. But till then, I'll keep to sleep with one eye open. This passed off to me, final summer, once I was 22. I wasn't a totally outgoing youngster on the time. If I ever did something social, it'd become due to the fact my degenerate friends had in some way dragged me out of the residence. This became one of these times. Well, it changed into alleged to be. My buddy Philip invited me to a house celebration at like 8 p.m. It changed into pretty spontaneous. However, I had nothing going on, so I reluctantly agreed to go along with him. I knew he changed into going to offer me a crap if I refused. I cannot even lie, though. The idea of a party, in spite of strangers, sounded more attractive than being by myself. Philip was a few cities over from me, so it made extra sense for us to power one by one instead of going collectively. He gave me the Addy, and I was on my manner. The literal 2D I pulled onto the street. Philip bailed on the ultimate minute. Rightfully so. I became fantastic pissed off. How ought he bail on me like this? There I become, feeling like an entire fool out of doors, a stranger's house. Annoyed, but decided now not to waste the night. I decided to go in. Drove all the way right here, I notion. Might as properly go internal. I walked up the front steps and knocked at the door. The host, Randy, greeted me warmly. He changed into instantly likable, charismatic, and friendly, without being a douchebag. He brought me round, and things were without a doubt less awkward than I had anticipated. People were truly friendly to me, despite not knowing who I changed into. There were even a few women I had my eyes on. I determined to revel in the birthday celebration and hit the booze. Hard. It turned into getting pretty late. However, the party was nonetheless raging. Admittedly, I might have overdone it with the ingesting. At one factor, I changed into so nauseous and dizzy that I wanted to destroy. It ought to. We're near 2 a.m. at that factor. I went upstairs to look for a restroom, but they were all occupied. The house became deceptively large. Granted, it turned into, in all likelihood, the alcohol, but I turned into actually getting misplaced, stumbling through the maze of hallways up there. After making it to the top floor, I located a door leading to what regarded like an attic or storage room. Desperate for privacy, I figured it turned into as suitable a place as any to pull myself together. I groped round blindly for the light transfer. However, there has been none. This becomes simply an attic or something, as there has been additionally dirt anywhere. There turned into a window in some distance nook which I opened, allowing the cool night breeze to scrub over me. There become a solid minute there, where I changed into severely, considering throwing up onto the roof. The breeze somewhat cured my nausea, though, so I simply kept my head spent time of the window. It turned into dark outdoor, and the quiet was a clean contrast to the boisterous chaos downstairs. Sometimes all you want to restore your nation of thoughts is a gentle breeze and a few peace and quiet. Just as I was about to close the window and head returned, I heard a faint noise. Footsteps on the roof shingles. That didn't make any sense, though. Was I going crazy? Curious, I climbed out onto the roof. In all honesty, there has been probably a 0% risk I could have finished that if I have been sober. I slowly stood up and seemed around. In the moonlight, I noticed something terrifying. There were two masked figures with baggage rising from every other window. It dawned on me. Randy's house changed into being robbed. I started panicking. Should I shout and confront them? Then a greater pressing query hit me. What if they were armed? In my clumsy kingdom of disbelief, I slipped and scuffed one of the shingles quite loudly. One of the burglars heard it and jolted his head in my direction. Our eyes briefly met, and I froze. He nudged his associate, and the two of them quickly started making their manner throughout the roof. Adrenaline surged through me. I could not allow them to get away. Randy were so welcoming, and I felt a surge of loyalty. I decided to act. I quietly observed the burglars throughout the roof, keeping a safe distance. They headed in the direction of a sloping part of the roof, for an less difficult escape. As they climbed down, I pulled out my telephone to dial 911, but fumbled in my drunken country, losing it. The smartphone clattered loudly, and the burglars grew to become sharply. "Who's there?" one of them hissed. Hard pounding, I ducked and scanned my surroundings, spotting a free roof shingle. Without thinking, I grabbed it and hurled it closer to them. It overlooked, however, the noise startled them, causing one to lose his footing. He tumbled down the roof, crashing into the gutter earlier than falling to the ground. The different burglar, now panicked, leaped to a neighboring tree and scrambled down. I rushed to the threshold of the roof and noticed the fallen burglar, groaning at the floor. I had to alert everybody. As I grew to move lower back, I heard sirens. Someone else have to have known as the police officers. I stumbled again into the attic room and made my way downstairs, seeking to seem calm. The party changed into still in complete swing, oblivious to the drama outdoor. I determined Randy guffawing and speaking to guests. "Randy, you want to call the police? There's been a theft. I noticed the burglars at the roof," I said. Randy's face grew to become from entertainment to shock. "Are you severe?" he said. As he hurried to make the decision, I explained what passed off. The birthday party mood shifted from party to difficulty. Apparently, one of Randy's buddies had coincidentally already referred to as the police to report a noise grievance, which was an exceptionally ironic flip of exact fortune. When they arrived, I mentioned my story, mained them to the injured burglar. The man became arrested, but his partner had fled. The birthday celebration ended all at once. People began scattering, and the lighting fixtures were given flipped on. I attempted my nice, to behave sober. However, even in the end that took place, I was nonetheless stumbling a bit. Randy thanked me profusely, still in disbelief. As for me, I become simply happy I should help, notwithstanding the weird and terrifying situations. Looking returned, I nevertheless cannot, without a doubt, give an explanation for why the burglars wouldn't have chosen a house having a party to rob. But perhaps they'd earlier information of the residents and knew no one would be upstairs. I figured that could be the cease of the story, however speedy forward some months, and Ivy were given quite the update. I became playing video games at Philip's residence one night time, when he were given a call from Randy, who invited us over for some beers. Up until that factor, I hadn't certainly realized the two of them had been that near. The first issue I noticed when I pulled as much as Randy's house became the front door, and every window in sight have been absolutely unique. Was I no longer remembering his residence right? I ought to have sworn the home windows within the front door were white, but they were all gray and lots greater heavy responsibility looking. Randy waved us in, and we went all the way down to his basement. We cracked a few beers and started playing a sport of pool. To my wonder, he genuinely recognized me from the party and thanked me again for my problem. What he informed us become truly loopy, although, apparently, the burglar the police caught that night, time refused to snitch on his associate and was currently serving a lengthy prison sentence. The police hadn't been capable of getting any leads into catching the other man, though. Randy told us that not even a week after the incident took place, his family started receiving threatening letters from an unknown sender, some of which blanketed pics of Randy and his circle of relatives members. Obviously, they said those occurrences, but the police had no real leads. A month after that, Randy's mother noticed a suspicious car circling the house at like 1 a.m., and a few days later, Randy's dad claimed that matters in their backyard have been long gone through and moved round. In reaction, Randy's dad upped their home safety a diploma, and even went as far as to update and toughen all their doors and windows. I changed into taken aback. This was still an ongoing problem for Randy, and I had no concept how serious a state of affairs like this could get. Summer's speedy drawing close, and I'm sure I'll have every other replace when I see Randy once more.